Mr. President, I'd like to extend our warm welcome to His Excellency Mr. Bruno Rodriguez Paria, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Cuba. Vietnam aligns itself with the statements made by Uganda, Iraq, and Singapore on behalf of the non-aligned movement, the Group of 77 in China, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, respectively. Mr. President, for over 60 years, the economic, commercial, and financial embargoes against Cuba has been the longest system of unilateral sanctions imposed on any nations. The embargo not only constitutes a violation of international law, it contradicts the fundamental principles and purposes of the UN Charter. The embargo deprives ordinary Cubans of access to essential supplies and services such as food, medicine, and equipment. It has made devastating impacts on the Cuban economy, limiting Cuba's access to international markets, to capital and technology necessary for economic development, discouraging foreign investment, and hindering economic growth. Figures of economic losses can be found in the latest Secretary General's report on this agenda item, and they are numerous. But most importantly, it is not possible to assess the full extent of negative impacts on Cubans' human development. Decades of continuous embargo have denied ordinary Cubans of opportunities to enhance human capital and productivity. The damage of these restrictions has been even exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially with the classification of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism since 2021. Such a designation has only intensified challenges by imposing additional restrictions on travel and remittance to Cuba, severely limiting the much-needed resources inflows into Cuban economy. It also creates further obstacles for foreign companies looking to invest and operate in Cuba, ultimately harming the development and well-being of its population. As we look to the future, we must acknowledge that generations of Cubans risk being left behind, unable to achieve their full potential and their aspirations for prosperity, progress, and sustainable development. Vietnam endured the harmful consequences of embargoes firsthand and in the past, and we are fully aware of the damage and suffering they inflict, especially on ordinary people. It is therefore Vietnam's consistent stance to oppose unilateral coercive measures, including embargoes placed against sovereign states. It is with such conviction that we will vote unreservedly in favor of draft resolution A/79/N6, aligning ourselves with the overwhelming majority of the UN member states that have advocated for the lifting of the embargo placed on Cuba for the past 32 years. The continuation of these embargoes is unjust and is inexcusable. It is not only detrimental to the Cuban people, but also prevents many others around the world from access to Cuba's assistance and expertise. Vietnam is a long-time beneficiary of Cuban assistance and is particularly grateful for Cuba's timely provision of COVID-19 vaccines during the global pandemic. Cuba has a proud and commendable history of humanitarian engagement, responding quickly to natural disasters and epidemics. For many years, Cuban doctors and medical professionals have been at the forefront of providing assistance to those in need, particularly in the developing world. It is a leader and an exemplary representative of the Global South, promoting international solidarity, contributing to South-South cooperation, and championing the legitimate interest of developing countries. We urge the United States to immediately remove Cuba from its list of state sponsors of terrorism and to end the economic, commercial, and financial embargoes against Cuba. This action would be a crucial first step in reversing the U.S. current policy towards Cuba. It is our sincere hope that the U.S. and Cuba can engage in constructive dialogue and work towards normalization of relations based on equality, reciprocity, and respect for each other's sovereignty and political independence. Such efforts would benefit both peoples and contribute to peace, stability, and sustainable development in the region and the world. Vietnam stands ready to play our part in fostering dialogue and mutual trust in this process, and once again firmly reiterates the strong friendship, cooperation, and solidarity with the brotherly people of Cuba. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the